Every relationship you've ever been in had rules. Not the kind you agreed to, not the kind anyone wrote down, but the kind that quietly formed in the spaces between you. These are the silent contracts. Who gives more? Who takes less? Who apologizes first? Who swallows their needs? Who listens? Who leads? Who carries the weight of keeping it all together? And at the root of every silent contract is the same truth. Every relationship is also a negotiation of power. When two people fall in love, it feels pure, as if love alone will be enough to sustain the bond. But over time, patterns form. Power is distributed, and without ever discussing it, we start living under unspoken rules. Who decides what matters? Who decides what gets ignored? Whose needs set the rhythm, and whose are silenced in the name of peace? Now hear this. Power in itself is not the problem. Every relationship has power dynamics. Someone leans in more. Someone holds back more. Sometimes one leads. Sometimes one follows. That exchange is part of intimacy. It's how two different lives weave together. The problem isn't power. It's the misuse of it. It's when one person begins to hold power not as balance, but as leverage. When silence is used to control, when love is used as currency, when compromise becomes manipulation. That's the trap of the silent contract. It's not evil in theory, but in practice it often turns into a cage. And here's the real cost. Without even realizing it, you may already be living under one. You've ignored the unease, written off the imbalance, or convinced yourself that's just how relationships are. But once you see it for what it is, you can never unsee it. And the truth you've avoided begins to stare back at you. Silent contracts are dangerous not because they exist, but because they are hidden, and what's hidden cannot be held accountable. You bend, thinking it's love. You silence yourself, thinking it's compromise. You give more than you can afford, thinking it proves devotion. But here's the truth. Those aren't acts of love. They're survival strategies. And survival is not the same thing as connection. The real problem is that the misuse of power and love sometimes wears the mask of care. Control disguised as protection, silence disguised as peace, sacrifice disguised as loyalty. And because you want to believe in love, you let the mask fool you. Until one day you wake up realizing the relationship hasn't been sustained by love. It's been sustained by fear. How do you know if you're caught in one of these hidden agreements? The unequal voice. One of you speaks without fear, the other edits every word before it leaves their lips. That's not balance. That's silence disguised as harmony. The emotional tax. If closeness leaves you heavy instead of nourished, then you're paying a hidden price just to stay connected. Love should fill, not drain. Walking on eggshells. If your peace depends on keeping them calm, you're not free. That isn't a partnership. That's captivity dressed up as care. The fixed roles. In love, roles should breathe and shift, but in silent contracts, they harden. One of you is always the strong one, the other always fragile. One always forgives, the other always wounds. These aren't roles anymore. They're cages. The fear of breaking it, and perhaps the clearest sign, fear. If telling the truth feels like a threat to the entire bond, then fear has become the glue. But here's something we don't like to admit. Sometimes you're not only the one suffering inside the contract. Sometimes you're also the one enforcing it. Maybe you've leaned on their silence because it was easier than facing their truth. Maybe you've expected sacrifice without ever asking if it was freely given. Maybe you've told yourself, I only do this because I love them, when really you feared losing control. And maybe, just maybe, you've been both, the one silenced and the one silencing. Because power isn't a straight line. It flows back and forth, shifting in ways we don't always see. This isn't about blame, it's about awakening. Because once you see where the power is hiding, you can finally begin to choose love instead of fear. Now remember this, power itself is not the enemy. Every relationship carries it. It's the current that moves between two souls. The real question is that current flowing back and forth, or is it being held in one pair of hands? Healthy love doesn't deny power. It shares it. It says, today I'll hold you up, tomorrow you'll hold me. Today I'll be the strong one. Tomorrow I may need your arms to fall into. That rhythm, that give and take, is what makes love alive. It breathes, it bends. It allows both of you to be human. But when one person keeps all the power, when silence is demanded instead of chosen, when the scales never shift, love stops breathing. It stiffens into something else, something that looks like care, but feels like control. And here's the truth worth holding close. This isn't about blame. It's about awareness. Because once you see the pattern, you have a chance to bring love back into balance. Hidden power plays don't heal in the dark. They heal when they're spoken, when both hearts lean in and agree to write a new story, one where strength and softness are shared. So how do you begin to free yourself from these silent contracts? I want you to remember, there isn't a single formula, no rigid checklist that works for everyone. What I'm about to share isn't the only way. It's just a guide, a light to help you see where you stand, and maybe where you could step next. First, bring the unspoken into the open. Ask yourself, what are the quiet rules I've been living by? Who sacrifices? Who apologizes first? Who's allowed to need comfort? Just noticing these patterns is already an act of freedom. Second, question the consent. Did you ever agree to this rule? Or did you just slip into it because it was easier, or expected, or demanded? Often the answer is no, and realizing that can awaken something inside you. Third, give the rule a voice. There's a strange power in speaking it aloud. I notice I'm always the one to apologize. I feel like I'm not allowed to have needs here. Once it's said, it cannot be unseen. The silence loses its grip. Fourth, notice the response. When you show your truth, do they soften with you and seek balance? Or do they tighten their hold and retreat into control? Their reaction reveals what kind of love you truly share. Finally, choose how to move forward. Healthy love is flexible. It rewrites its own story over and over with honesty. But if the other person refuses to look, refuses to shift, then sometimes the only way to break the contract is to let the bond go. That is not failure. That is an act of courage, because real love cannot live on false terms. And if you try these steps, remember, they are not rigid laws, just gentle lights to guide your way. The path to real love is not about perfection. It's about awareness, courage, and the willingness to keep rewriting the story together. And here's the beauty of it. Breaking a silent contract doesn't destroy love. It clears the fog around it. It purifies it. Because love does not need silence to survive. It does not need manipulation to endure. It does not need you to shrink in order to thrive. What love needs is honesty, the kind that may tremble but still speaks, the kind that may scare you but still leans closer. Love only asks for the courage to meet each other in truth, not in fear. And when two hearts can do that, power doesn't divide you. It flows between you. You don't need 1,000 voices telling you how to love. You need reminders that cut through the noise and call you back to yourself. That's what I offer here. So if this spoke to you, subscribe and let the next cookie meet you when you need it most. That's today's cookie. Subscribe for your next bite.